Coming up on today's episode of the Money Pants podcast, why learning to work is more important than Mandarin lessons, why raw talent alone doesn't guarantee success, and a little-known secret to getting ahead in Hollywood. But first, the joke of the day.
A 6-year-old boy called his mother from his friend Charlie's house and confessed he had broken a lamp when he threw a football in their living room. "But Mom," he said, brightening, "you don't have to worry about buying another one. Charlie's mother said it was irreplaceable." Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to episode 1 of the Money Pants podcast. We are your hosts, Hannah and Fontaine Judd, and we're the proud parents of 7 sons and 6 daughters, ranging in age from college student to toddler. We're BYU graduates and the creators of Money Pants. Head on over to CaptainMoneyPants.com to learn more about what we do and what we're all about. Today's topic is the number 1 habit your children should develop.
A couple years ago, the Wall Street Journal had an article entitled, "Less Mandarin, More Chores." And the point of the article was that so many parents want their kids to be successful. And so they have their kids signed up for all these classes to get ahead. Mandarin, tennis, singing, after-school tutoring.
Math tutors, science tutors.
Yeah, they just have their kids' schedules jam-packed full of highly educational activities, things designed to get their kids ahead. And the point of the article was that these packed schedules had an expense. They were basically shoving chores out of the way. The kids no longer had time to do chores. But there was a problem with this. Every study that's been done shows that a child having chores, especially from an early age, was more indicative of their future success than anything else. So if you have to choose between Mandarin classes and doing chores, the Wall Street Journal said, you need to pick chores. That was more important.
Well, no, that was just it. The parents were missing the point. They thought by doing all these extra things, they were helping their kids to get ahead, but in reality, they were circumventing or short-sighted, what would be the term?
They were leaving out the most important ingredient.
The most important thing of success was, in fact,
doing
the chores. Yeah.
As lowly and as unimportant as that sounds, it was actually more important than these extracurricular activities.
I like how Trixie is vacuuming in the background.
I know. That, case in point, we really believe in this. As a parent, I know my mom dealt with this, and I used to deal with this, where I would feel guilty, and I know my mom felt guilty, asking especially the high school, junior high students to do chores and help around the house.
Yeah, because they're so busy. I look at like Trixie's workload, or Caleb's taking 4 AP classes right now. His choice, by the way, not ours.
Not ours.
I wouldn't recommend that, but he's taking 4 AP classes right now, and his workload is tremendous, and you feel bad. Hey, could you go do the dishes, or could you clean the bath? You feel bad.
Well, and then they've got youth group, they've got sports, they've got other things that they participate in.
He was in football last semester.
Yeah.
He had his scout troop and
Which
his
was
youth group.
overdoing it. That was overdoing
Yeah.
it. Football was ridiculous. 18 hours a week outside of school. So you feel, as a parent, I know I'll sometimes struggle with that feeling of guilt of, I'm being petty. I'm asking them to do the dishes when I know they have all these other things that are so important.
Well, and
their grades and their, all these other commitments
and
that
they
have.
And Trixie and Ruby and Kate, they're not afraid to tell you either. I'm too busy.
Yeah, Mom, I don't have time for that. This isn't as important. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is, as a parent, you know that it's super hard to teach your kids how to do a chore, and then you've got to inspect it, you've got to stay on it, it's a lot of work. And sometimes it's a struggle, and a lot of parents realize, wait a minute, it's actually less work, less stress, if I just do it myself.
Yeah.
Or
Sure.
Go hire somebody for minimum wage, hey, clean my house, clean my kid's room.
Well, no, especially if the kids are giving you pushback, or they're too busy, or they don't want to. And after a while, you're like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, this isn't efficient.
It's too much work. It causes a fight every time. It's not working out. They don't have the time anyway. Either I'll do it myself, or
let's make life easier.
I'll have somebody else do it. Yeah.
I'm going to make my life easier, and let's just skip this.
Yeah.
Once you realize, though, that teaching them to work and having them do this work consistently is one of the number one ingredients that goes into their future success. It changes everything. When you really believe that and realize that, all of a sudden you don't feel guilty about saying, nope, you got to make your bed. You got to clean your room. You got to take out the garbage. All of a sudden you're like, no, I'm being a good parent, and this is important for my child. This is crucial for them. And it changes. You don't feel guilty about it because you know, no, this is definitely important, and this is for their benefit. And it gives you that confidence as a parent, realizing that information. And then it also, as far as the time and energy goes, all of a sudden it's worth that time and energy. Because, you're putting all your time and energy to driving around all over, putting all this money into it, putting them in this class, putting them that, getting them the best tutors, getting them all this. And you realize, wait a minute, if this is more important, it's worth my time. It's worth my energy to have them learn to do this. And so it changes your perspective on what you're doing as a parent. Instead of, oh, I'm just being a nag and I'm being petty, I'm wasting their time. All of a sudden it's, no, this is more important. This is crucial for their future success.
I think one of the underlying, though, beliefs is that work isn't that important. Or I think maybe the idea is that somehow a person's talents trump work. Like,
right.
It's just not that important. How do I put that?
Well, it's like when my husband worked in Hollywood for over a decade. And that was an eye-opener there, because living in LA, so many people moved out there with stars in their eyes, thinking, I'm talented, I'm beautiful, people are going to see me and just be wowed by me, and I'm going to be handed a role and I'm
going to be famous.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
With
sure.
little or no effort on my part.
That was definitely a prevailing theme in Hollywood, where people would move out there thinking, I'm going to be famous, without ever putting in the work.
Yeah, hand me a script, I'm here.
And I was a television editor, so my job was to put the shows together. But even that mentality was prevalent among editors, where
even though editors aren't a famous part of Hollywood, but even then in your career it was too.
It was interesting because my experience, and I worked there for 10 years, my experience was overwhelmingly the people who were successful were the people who showed up. 99% of success in Hollywood was just showing up, because you can learn on the job. And I showed up in Hollywood, and I had been an editor for several years when I moved there. And to get to the transitioning from where I was before to Hollywood, it was a bit of a transition there. But once I got going, I thought I was good. But when I got to Hollywood, I realized, oh man, I have a lot more to do. But I already knew how to work. And so it wasn't a big deal to me. I was like, okay, well, roll up my sleeves and get to work. But for other people who moved there, they just couldn't hack it, because they weren't used to working, and they weren't willing to put in the effort to develop their talent or their ability, which...
Well, a friend of mine who was an actress down there, a successful TV actress where she had regular work, she said it was shocking how many of the other actors and actresses would walk onto set never having researched their parts, never having read the script, never having practiced their lines, and they were doing their lines for the first time and had no idea who their character was. They just hadn't done the basic homework that you're supposed to do as an actor, like basic homework. And she was
that's what Anthony Hopkins said.
Yeah.
He was complaining. He's like, only his complaint was the other way. He's like, I'm always shocked at how many directors don't do the work. They haven't done the work to develop what we're going to be doing. And that was his complaint.
Yeah. So a true professional there.
Oh, but speaking of professions and professionals, though, the other going back to this idea though of talent somehow trumps the necessity for work, I totally disagree with that. First of all, but I think a really good example would be the basketball star Tracy McGrady, and that, from what I've read, and I don't know him personally, but from what I've read, he was perhaps the most genuinely, naturally gifted basketball player ever. He had the ability to be better than Wilt Chamberlain and Michael Jordan and LeBron James and all these other amazing basketball players combined. He just had so much raw talent. It was like oozing out of him. He was just truly a gifted basketball player, but he was lazy. He didn't want to put in the work to develop his talents. And from his, I believe it was his high school and his college and his NBA coaches all said, yeah, I couldn't work with the guy. He drove me crazy. The amount of talent that guy had, and he just didn't want to put in the effort to develop it. And he, instead of being the greatest player of all time, he was, he was he was a pretty good player, but that was it. He never truly rose to the level that he could have because he wasn't willing to work, and he thought he could get by just on his talents.
Well, sometimes it actually is more challenging to learn to work the more talented you are. And here's why. We had a daughter who was extremely talented with music. Since she was a baby, she could pick out tunes on the piano. She just had an ear for music. And so one time I signed her up for a piano class. And she was taking the class, and the teacher was super impressed, and she'd come in there and she'd play the songs. Finally, I had to pull the teacher aside and say, my daughter's not practicing at all. What she's doing is she's going in there and she's telling you, oh, could you play the song for me one time? And then she's just sitting down and playing by ear what you just played. She can't read a single note. Okay.
But she was that talented.
And once the teacher realized that, she was like, oh, okay. So
because most people aren't that talented. You can dupe most people.
Yeah. And the same thing happened in her singing class. The same thing, because she had perfect pitch, but she wasn't actually practicing at home, but she was getting away with it. But had she practiced, she would have been
amazing,
incredible. Not amazing. She would have been incredible. But as it was, she was wowing her teachers, and she wasn't having to work at all. But the thing is that only took her so far.
Yeah.
You can only go so far.
Well, and we're going to touch on that in a minute, like what the limits are, because if you don't learn to work, like what are the limits?
Yeah, but it's actually harder when you have that natural talent to realize, to accept the fact
because you're not being held to a standard. You're already above everybody else.
You're above the standard, and so you think you're the exception to work, and that it doesn't really matter. But in the long run, it does matter. And the best example I can think of, personal example, when I was in second grade, I was not considered one of the smartest kids. But I was sitting next to this boy in second grade who I was just amazed by him. He was so smart and so fast. Like in math, I would try to get my worksheets done as quickly as he did. I couldn't even come close. I thought, how is it even possible for him to compute math that quickly in his head and to get the answers down? And I was just in awe of this classmate of mine, how naturally smart he was. And so I just kept working, and by fifth grade, both of us he received the top award for boys academically, and I was super proud because I was standing next to him as the top girl for academics. But then what was sad was the next year, junior high's kind of a rough time. You make a lot of critical decisions during that time. This boy made some bad friends, stopped applying himself in class, started purposely not doing well in school and goofing off. And these were not good friends. Meanwhile, I kept working. Fast forward to high school. We're in some social gathering together. And he made a comment to me, oh, you're so smart, Hannah, though. And some comment about how he was dumb. And I was like, what? I knew that's not true. I knew that wasn't true. I knew that he was naturally way smarter than I ever had been. The difference is I had kept working when he stopped. And he finally started thinking he was stupid and not talented, and that wasn't true at all. It was a lie. The only difference was I had kept plugging along, and by that time I was in line to be valedictorian at the high school that I was at. And I knew I wasn't the smartest kid there. I knew I wasn't even close to the smartest kid. And that's when I started realizing, wait a minute, hard work makes you talented. Hard work makes you smart.
Yeah. Well,
And it was this aha moment of, wait a minute.
And I don't claim to be an expert on this topic, but I do want to just touch base on that really quick. I think that Mother Teresa, I think, would be a good example of that, where she wasn't necessarily the most talented person. She was, from what I've read, she wasn't particularly good at speaking or particularly good at writing or particularly good at much of anything, except she was really hardworking. Mm-hmm. And she worked tirelessly to help other people. And because what she lacked in raw talent, she made up for in spades in working hard. And I think that's kind of the point, is most of us don't have the talent coming out of our ears. But we can develop what talents we have and enjoy success if we just learned, if we develop that work ethic. Mm-hmm. And that was, I think Mother Teresa's a fantastic example of that, where can anybody doubt the amount of good she did simply by virtue of her working hard and developing what talents that she had? And I think that falls right in line with what you were just saying about yourself, where you didn't think that you were the most talented. Interestingly, I think that your talent is hard work, but you worked hard to develop that.
Yeah.
And as part of that, you were able to succeed in all these other areas. And so that's why we say it's like the number one attribute or talent or habit your children should learn, is because everything else kind of flows from that. If you're hardworking, you'll be able to overcome the homework challenges, or you'll be able to figure out how algebra works, or you'll be able to do well on the basketball team, or you'll be able to do well in your social settings. Like that work ethic translates across the board. And if you're learning Mandarin, you'll be able to learn Mandarin more effectively if you've learned how to work.
When my kids and I were studying anatomy and we were studying the brain and intelligence, it was kind of an aha moment when you realize that you build neuron networks within your brain through work. You can actually,
Really?
Your intelligence is actually created as you work and study, and it creates neuron networks.
So the neuron
your
network.
intelligence is actually dependent on work.
Did they say why?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
But you remember them saying...
But I remember going, wait a minute, a person can build new neuron networks through work. And your intelligence...
Did they say what type of work? Or?
Your intelligence depends on your work.
Huh.
And so it's not, oh, you're smart. It's not just something you
I see what they're saying. They're saying it's intelligence is something you can develop.
Yes, it's something you develop
that's cool.
through work. That's how you build new neuron networks. You cannot build new neuron networks without work.
Huh.
But that's what your intelligence depends on.
Well, but that's just it. That's kind of what we're trying to do with our children. And I think, I like to think that I speak for most parents, that you want your kids to be smart. You want your kids to be intelligent. You want your kids to be successful. Isn't that kind of the whole goal of parenting? Why you had kids?
I'm sure there's some oddballs out there who don't.
I want my kids to be stupid. I'm going to withhold intelligence from, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think for most parents, that's what they want. They want their kids to have what you just described, where they want them to be intelligent. They want them to be hardworking.
They want them to reach their potential.
And I think maybe we need to define what it means to be successful, because we kind of use that term. We throw that term around like, oh, you want your kids to be successful. What does that mean? To me, it was what I just said, where my children, I feel like I have succeeded as a parent if my children have work ethic and they are able to accomplish their unique mission in life, whatever that may be. where they're able to determine what their unique skill set is, whatever talents they do have, and then to use them to the best of their abilities to fulfill their destiny. You know, we love Hollywood movies where the main, like especially with all the action the hero movies that we have, where they discover their hidden ability, like, oh, here's my superpower. I truly believe every single person has at least one superpower. It's discovering what that superpower is and then developing it. But we love our superhero movies are like that, where it's so exciting to watch the superhero discover the superpower and then develop it and then use that to defeat the bad guy. That's kind of how I envision my job as a parent, is to help my kids discover what their superpowers are and help them develop it so that they can, and in this case, the bad guy is life, so they can be successful in whatever life throws at them. And that's kind of how I envision success. That's my definition of success when I'm talking about my kids. And of course, I want them to be happy.
That's why we like superhero movies.
At some level,
makes sense now.
I don't know. That can be totally
We
out
are
of left
the
field.
superheroes.
I think so, though. I truly believe that every person has at least one superpower, and it may not be obvious. It may not be crashing through walls, but it could be, like your superpower is actually you know how to talk to people who are distressed. Or your superpower is you're calm in emergencies. Or your superpower is you are really good at styling hair. I don't know. But I truly believe every single person on the planet has at least one.
Has something to contribute.
Yeah.
I mean, you watched, who's that singer?
Adele.
No,
Michael Jackson.
No. The one who has the challenges, Susan Boyle.
Oh, right.
You know, you watch her first audition on TV.
Oh, it's awkward.
And it's just, well, it is. It's awkward, but you're not expecting it. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, comes this
angelic voice.
Where it just sends tingles down your spine, and you're like, I never thought that would have come out of her. Well, no, but but she had that in there,
and she did work hard to develop that. I know.
But everybody has something.
But my point too, though, to a degree, is that not everybody's talents are that obvious. And that's part of the problem. Mm-hmm. And that's what I noticed in Hollywood, too, is that everybody there was talented, like they were a talented singer or an actor or musician or whatever. I was blown away by the amount of talent down there. But most people don't have the more obvious or the more visible talents like they did in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. But I do think everybody has some hidden talent or maybe not as obvious talent that they need to develop. And so when we talk about success, I think that's kind of our job as parents, is to help them learn to work so that then they can develop that talent or those talents that they've been given.
Means work.
Yeah.
When you say develop it, that means work at it.
Work at it. Yeah, exactly.
So that's not, you're not going to develop your talents will never go anywhere if you don't apply that work to it.
And there are plenty of examples. Sadly, there are plenty of examples of talented people who went nowhere. They were just kind of muddled through life, and then there are plenty of examples of ordinary people who weren't particularly talented, who worked hard to develop the talents, who did amazing things.
Yeah, but that kind of leads us back to, but I'm having my kids work at soccer. I'm having them work at singing. That is work. Right. Why do these chores matter? Well, chores are not glamorous. That is the beauty of chores. Chores are boring. They're repetitive every day, and you have to do it rain or shine. And there aren't cheering people. There aren't trophies. There aren't
trophies. No ribbons.
Yes, there's not a cheering audience. There's not, a coach there. Oh wow, you're so talented. No, you're vacuuming. It's just
You're cleaning a toilet.
You're cleaning a toilet, and you did it yesterday, and you did it the day before. And that's why chores are the key, is because back to your personal experience of working in Hollywood, when my husband was working in Hollywood as an editor, 99% of his job was tedious, boring, and not glamorous.
There was that 1% though.
Yeah, there was that 1% of wow, but 99% of it was awful. And I would go, how do you handle this job? You have to, for 2 weeks, go through weeks and weeks of footage, and then you have to organize it all, and then you have to like it
Slowly,
was just it
slowly
was
chop it down
so tedious and so boring. I just thought, how is he able to do this? This is awful. But it was 99% of it was just plain old tedious work. And not much different than cleaning a toilet.
Oh, I got to find that John Wooden quote. Something along the lines of talent is as common as table salt. But I got to find the quote because it's something like, but only the ones who learn how to work are the ones that rise to the top, or something like that.
John Wooden understood that, where
Yeah.
he would look for the players who were hard workers because he knew he could work with them.
And he could shape them into what they needed to be.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so let's take the flip side. What if you don't learn to work? What happens? I think that maybe that's the question. If you don't do chores, if you don't learn to do the tedious, boring, mundane things, what happens?
I can tell you what happens. You're always looking for a way around, a shortcut. Those people grow up to always try to find a shortcut. Oh, I don't need to graduate from college. I don't need to work. I'm going to get it. Oh, let me do this get rich quick scheme.
Yep. Yeah.
Let me buy a lottery ticket. Let me steal something.
They're always looking for the easy way out.
Yeah.
They don't know how to buckle down and get to work.
Let me cheat off of others. Let
So
me
and
get
those
around
are
it.
those are kind of extreme cases, but even just in the normal cases, they're always looking for a handout or the easy way out. They're not willing to do the hard thing.
Yeah.
And here's the catchphrase. I'm going to copyright this. I love this because this is what I say. Anything of value in life requires hard work. Anything of value in life requires hard work. That includes your job, meaning your career. That includes school. That includes sports. That also includes relationships. What happens if you never learned how to work and you get in a relationship that needs work? What if your spouse is having a tough time? Or what if your girlfriend is having a tough time? Or what if one of your parents is having a tough time? Or one of your siblings is having a tough time? Yeah. And you can find tough time by sickness or mental distress or emotional problems or financial issues. Whatever the case, what if a relationship you have is having problems? What are you going to do? You're going to buckle down, you're going to roll up your sleeves and get to work and figure out how to make it work? Or you're going to look for the easy way out and go, yeah, it's too hard, too much work, I'm going to go somewhere else. And that's what happens. People who never learn how to work are the ones that you end up with a failed relationship. They're the ones
they expect it to be handed to them, and if it's not handed to them as it should be in a perfect state, it's like, oh, no, I'm not willing to work with this.
If you're not willing to work, you'll never go anywhere. You financially, with your career, or with your talents, or with your abilities, or with your relationships, and it's bad. You don't want to go there. You want to learn how to work because anything of value. And that's where the whole happiness thing comes in.
That's true. Your relationships, like they say, love is a verb. It's something you do. And the feelings follow.
Yeah.
Your relationships depend on that.
You and I, though, have never
concept.
had any problems. We never had to work through anything.
No. It's so weird.
No, our relationship has been a ton of work to get to where we need to be, and we're still working at it. And it's I like that. Love is a verb. We're actively working towards making our relationship better.
Yeah, we have to serve one another,
but it's tedious and it's boring and it's not exciting and nobody's throwing us a ticker tape parade.
But the reward at the end is worth it.
And that's what we're all about. And the process of as we're going through this process, one of the byproducts is happiness.
Yeah.
As you're working through developing your talents, or working through challenges at your employment, or working through difficulties in a relationship, the byproduct is happiness. And that's what we want as parents for our children anyway, is for them to be happy.
Yeah. Well, I remember years back, there was a youth group. They were having a service project, and it was in our backyard. We had just moved into a new house, and our backyard needed to be cleared. There was a lot of stuff back there.
It had been neglected for a decade. It was bad.
And so this huge youth group came over to help us clear the yard. And
Well, maybe we should clarify. We had a 1 acre property.
Yeah.
And it was overgrown in every way.
yeah, there was just stuff everywhere. And it was interesting because some of the youth came out, rolled their sleeves up, put gloves on, and dove in there and just got to work. And the hour that they were here, those kids worked the entire time. And it was impressive. Whereas other kids put on the gloves, pretended to work, but didn't really want to. And other kids didn't even try to appear like they were going to work. And it was kind of cool because we were able to watch those kids grow up. And sure enough, the ones who rolled up their sleeves, got to work, those, as we've watched them grow up, they have turned out to be happier, more successful, going places, more confident than the ones who, were just avoided work and looked down on work, weren't willing to work. And so it really is indicative of your future and your future success, your future happiness, because as your relationships are a huge part of the happiness. And as you pointed out, even that depends on your willingness to work. I don't know how to wrap this up besides to say, wow, less Mandarin, more chores. Make it a priority.
I think that's it. But I like what you said, where you went back to the whole idea of it's working when it's not glamorous. I think that's the true measure of character, is doing what needs to be done even once the excitement is worn off.
Yeah.
And that is what creates happiness and character.
That's where chores come in. That is where chores shine.
Because there's nothing exciting about them. And it's every day. And that's the other thing. It's got to be daily.
Yeah.
Like these are regular, routine, whether you feel well or not, whether you want to work or not.
You can't replace chores with Mandarin.
Yeah.
You can't do it. They are irreplaceable.
And that's it. We'll see you next time.